We're gonna pick up a few more people on Zoom, but since we have Jay here who's kicking us off, we'll get going. All right, you can still hear me on Zoom, right? Good. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the summer quarterly meeting for the Managing Healthy Landscapes group. My name is Matt Evans. I work at the Chicago Botanic Garden. Patty Vitt is the lead for this group, and I'm the co-lead as of last year. So she's away on vacation, so I'll be leading the meeting this time. A little bit about me is that I used to work at CW in 2017 after college, and then CW went through some restructuring, and I got out into the field and started working for Audubon Great Lakes, and then eventually wound up at the Chicago Botanic Garden as the woodland ecologist managing the forest preserve there. So that's me. Fun fact, I drove a Zamboni for 15 years, and we all have interesting stories about how we got to this work. So I'm excited for this meeting for everybody. We have some good topics to discuss. Presentations will be short and emphasis on discussion. We have an hour and a half and we only have 5 agenda items. So if there are things that come to mind that you'd like to talk about, please don't be shy. We have the time to talk about it. Okay, great. So let me see if I can advance the slides with buttons. No. Okay. So we'll be talking about the fire working group. I didn't hear from Alicia. Is she on the call?
Don't see her yet.
Okay. Well, we can come back to that agenda item if she comes in for soil and water conservation district funding. And then Isa Rudlinski will give us a little bit of an update about what it's like at the Forest Preserves of Cook County after their big referendum. And then exciting conservation herbicide news, sort of. It's on its way. Amy will deliver that. And then I'll talk a little bit about volunteer stewardship. And then Scott is going to give us a nice presentation about stream and waterway health updates. So without further ado, Jay, can I advance the slides for you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Just do it from right from here.
Can everybody hear Jay?
Do we want to do introductions or just like that?
So last time that we had this meeting, we did introductions and it took about 30 minutes. And so I thought that we'd just skip that. Okay, great. So Jay, go ahead. And
Testing, everybody can hear me. We're good. Thumbs up for those in the field. All right, perfect. So good morning. I'm Jay Johnson, filling in for John McCabe. So a last minute tag team effort here, so bear with me, but I'm the Heritage Site Logistics Manager, Forest Preserve District, DuPage County, and been with the district nearly 40 years. I'm 5 months away from that milestone. Over that time, I've helped and conducted many burns, as well as taught many classes, getting new crew members on board. History of, there you go, perfect. History of the Midwest Ecological Burn crew member training. For those that aren't familiar or for those that need a quick refresher, 2001, we created a manual and a PowerPoint. We worked with Chicago Wilderness, IEPA, IDNR, and Nature Conservancy and many other groups to create that training. To take basically information from S130, S190, and create a 2-day class focused on areas within our region rather than things out west. The class covers the why, where, when, and how of our burn efforts. It's a comprehensive 2-day course. Next slide, please. For nearly 20 years, this is an example of one of our slides. For nearly 20 years, we've been training staff with this information, collaboration of Chicago Wilderness and many other groups, along with Morton Arboretum. The attendees vary, but we have forest preserve districts, park districts, and then ecological restoration companies, and then volunteers from different agencies. Also during COVID, we conducted this class virtually and created a study guide which bridged the gap between the various methods that we had in place, the PowerPoint, the old slide presentation, as well as things that John and I would bring to the class. So we're keeping that study guide moving forward. It's been a helpful tool. Next slide. The high demand continues to create a need for more classes. We all know about the benefits of burning, and this is an example of one of those slides we're using. Go ahead. And as we look to create more classes and instructors, we need to create a strict process to train the trainer. So last winter, a few of us from Chicago Wilderness got together, including Megan Dunning from Morton Arboretum, John McCabe, and several other members, including myself, to discuss those concepts. Next slide. Thank you. The status of the fire working group efforts thus far are basically identifying who and how to make the current burn training PowerPoint usable for other agencies. The beauty of the class currently is that John and I have been teaching together, Batman and Robin, Starsky and Hutch, however you want to look at it, as a good team for 12 to 15 years. We've put over 2,000 people through this course, and we have worked constantly to upgrade and insert new slides so that we have new flavor constantly being added. And so we had to work to strip back that PowerPoint back to bare bones for new instructors to use. So we worked on that this winter, and is something that we do have available. We want to maintain the 2-day structure of the course. We found it to be productive and useful. We could just show people how to work a rake and backpack and drip torch and call it a good crew member training, but we've worked hard to make it inclusive so they have great crew members from this course. We want to maintain the integrity, which is key to this course. We want to maintain the high standards for students to earn that certification. Students currently work hard to get the knowledge and skill and ability and walk out of there with the certificate after being tested, if all goes well. We also stress the seriousness of the nature of this important land management tool. It's not something that we take lightly, although we have fun with the class. And then the Chicago Wilderness group that had met in the winter, it was suggested to create a panel, and prospective trainers would then be trained from that. And next slide. So with that, we identified 2 instructor levels, and that could be a lead instructor as well as a secondary instructor. And they would need to be certified, if they're a lead instructor, a certified Illinois prescribed burn manager, 3 years experience leading burns after receiving certifications, and then possibly looking at a secondary instructor. They would have recommendation from a lead instructor and their agency, and then they wouldn't have to go through the panel, but they would have 200 to 250 burns under their belt within the region, and then other burn related certifications. So then looking at train the trainer, where you would involve possibly these steps here, whether it's virtual, whether it's sitting in on a class or co-teaching with lead instructors, or even grandfathered in. If somebody has been training for a while already, has the experience as well as the other training. So with that, that's where we're at currently with training of instructors and thoughts regarding the addition of more basic crew member classes. And with that, I open it up to questions, but that's status so far.
Thanks, Jay. That's a great update, and yeah, open it up to anybody who has questions or comments or anything about Jay, anything they want to discuss about Jay's presentation here. Online too.
Otherwise, you can always reach out if you have other thoughts. We're open to more thoughts as we move forward, but that's what we have currently.
I have a question. I was at last week's meeting up in Lake County. John McCabe made a presentation about this overall plan. This is part of that, essentially. I guess this is the state of the art.
Exactly, and we're, basic gist of this is we're trying to get more instructors on board, offer more classes, but have some sort of structure to that. So as far as what John was covering, I'm not certain, but we're always looking to have more comprehensive burning and opportunities throughout, our area.
Actually, it was a different thing. He was referring specifically to the community wildfire preparedness plan
Oh, okay.
that they need to file, in order, well, to have a community wildfire preparedness plan, but then also in order to be able to apply for federal grants or other, you need to have this on file. So that was what John was working on originally. So it's separate from this, but obviously healthy ecosystems and creating more of those leads into healthy region.
Perfect, yeah, still related, understood, yeah. All right,
Luke or Lake, I'm so sorry. Can everybody online hear our discussion?
Yep, I can hear it pretty clearly.
Great. Okay. Awesome. One question I think is probably everybody's asking is, and we know that you don't have the answer either, but maybe it'd be good to discuss what the timeline looks like for all this. I know we're in July and everybody who works on this is in the middle of the field season. Do you think that more to come in the winter?
exactly, yeah, we were honestly, as we all can relate to, hoping to have a little bit more at this point, but if everybody's in support of what we've done so far, we would work on it again this fall. And as people are finding that they have people interested in becoming trainers and being a part of this, let us know. And then certainly this winter, we would hope to have things locked in.
Great.
We have a question from the chat as when is the next session? And obviously you don't have it locked in.
Yeah, exactly, to be determined,
Yep.
right? Yep.
Yep.
Is there a place where someone who might want to be a part of the next session can reach out? Would that be to Laura? Or,
Yeah, that would be fine, yeah.
When let me know too, and we can create like sort of a calendar event or even a link to your registration page.
Perfect.
and this might seem obvious, but just to say it, is this going to cover the CW region? Like even Indiana counties?
Exactly, yeah,
Outside
that's
of-
always been our intent is far reaching. We've even had some folks attend class from Michigan and Wisconsin a couple of times. So yeah, the word is getting out, but certainly Lake County, Illinois down to Lake County, Indiana, and
Yeah.
close associations. Yep.
Yeah, well, that's just so valuable having the 4 states involved with the Chicago Wilderness Region be able to have something like this available. That's great. All right, we'll move on to the next thing. If there are no more questions in the chat or in the room.
What's in the chat?
Oh, thank you.
It's 14 participants. I asked folks to put their names in
Oh,
the
okay.
chat, and there's a link to the running minutes as well.
And for clarification, something I glossed over is for the general classes, we try to offer one in the spring, one in the fall. And we do have a date with Arboretum already for our fall class. I just don't have that with me at the moment, but I'll get that to you.
Okay, or I can reach out to Megan, is that?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, there's always demand for those, and we lock those in months in advance so we can work around glass blowing of pumpkins and many other things that are at the Arboretum.
Yeah, of course. Speaking on behalf of the natural areas and ecosystem restoration volunteers of the region, will this be an opportunity available to volunteers who, especially long-term volunteers, ones that are, established in this work?
Yeah, it's open to all in basic crew member training, exactly right.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Any other questions? Great, okay, and did we hear from? We can move forward from there until we hear from TNC. Is Isa online?
I am.
Great, awesome.
Hey, good morning,
Um,
everyone.
Just tell me when to advance slides for you.
I will. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about the results of our referendum and how that has changed the work that we're doing. After I present and answer questions, I'm going to have to go join John McCabe at our board meeting, but Becky Collins is in the room, and she can also, she's our senior ecologist and can also fold some of those questions. So as many of you know, in November of 2022, the residents of Cook County voted yes on the referendum for clean air, water, and wildlife habitat for forest preserves of Cook County. And that leveraged their tax by an average of $21 a year per household, and provided us with $42 million a year annually to do more work, which is very exciting. Off of that $42 million, Chicago Botanic Gardens getting 2.4 and Brookfield Zoo Chicago is getting $4 million. They, many of you might not have known, are on our land and are part of the system. So next, please. And for those who are interested how this money is being split, this is a sort of big picture breakdown, and then I'll go into more information about how our Department of Resource Management is using that funding. So we got about $7 million more a year for land acquisition, and that allows us to purchase more land. As you can imagine, Cook County, there isn't a lot of vacant land in large amounts, and the land that is available is fairly expensive. But now we have a good bucket of money to purchase that, and we can either spend it all 1 year, or we can hold on to parts or all of it for like a larger bulk purchase in the following years. So that money doesn't sort of expire, if you will. We also, with this money, hope to, and we have been expanding our restoration efforts, mostly through work of contractors and hiring more crews, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and increase programming in our nature centers and otherwise throughout Cook County in our SEP department. Next slide, please. We also are in the process of addressing a lot of capital improvements programs. So buildings, roads, trails, parking lots, bathrooms, all those little things that might not sound super sexy, but are very important for the functioning of the forest preserves. And some of them have been, that can has been kicked down the road for a while because there was no funding. A very big part of our budget is going to resolve some of the pension shortfalls. And actually, because that is allocated very responsibly, around the time of the referendum, we got a lot of support from outside watchdog organizations because we were being responsible and thoughtful on how that money is spent. And then Zoo and the Garden, which I already mentioned before. Next, please. So this is just a breakup of how that money is allocated. You can see the pension obligation, which is over 20%, is the big green slice. Another darker green slice is ecological restoration. So our Department of Resource Management got $6.3 million extra, which is really great. We have land acquisition at $7 million. Public engagement at $2 million. And you can see some of the other things like public amenities, which is our planning and development department at $6 million. Next, please. In our Department of Resource Management, which is where I work, our money, we had a very good plan on how we're going to spend the extra funding and address the needs that we felt where, ones that were needed to be addressed immediately. So what we did was we added 2 positions to each one of our crews for a resource crew aide. And those are sort of entry-level apprenticeship-like positions that are meant to attract graduates from Conservation Corps program. So we spend a lot of money on that. We also hired a field laboratory technician, and conservation corps assistants. So last year in 2023, we added a total of 14 positions. Next. And this year, we also are adding positions. We're still in the process of adding positions. We added an entire crew, Thorn Creek. So now we have 3 crews in the south side of the county. So sort of like 290 south and 3 on the north side of the county. And with having that availability, we now move to have 2 crews, one south side, one north side, work every weekend. So if there are storms or other things that need to be addressed over the weekend, we can utilize our crews. That came in really handy with the last tornadoes sort of spike that we saw in the area. We are also in the process of trying to hire a restoration hydrologist. We have a wildlife aide and ecology research supervisor position posted right now. If someone is interested, please apply. And we have hired an operations manager and some other positions. So we are not only bulking up the boots on the ground, which are our crews that do hazard tree removal, restoration, just they're sort of our green berets. They do a little bit of everything. But also we bulked up with administrative support as well to be able to execute everything that we are doing. I'll go in a little more details on the next slide. So you can sort of see how we're allocating our money for restoration. We have added $2 million to our restoration bucket, and that's a lot of the work that's done through contracts, through our habitat enhancement contract. You can see how it's split up between different invasives that we are controlling, but woody clearing and resprouts being the largest part, which is, as you know, this is the big lift that we do, like the first swift over as we start restoration on a certain project. Next. We also upped our amount that we can spend for integrative wildlife management. This is a sort of a word for deer culling. So we do that, and we hire USDA to help us accomplish our goals. We were able to expand to 7 through 8 landscapes last year, 7 landscapes last year, and hoping to add another one this year. And that is hiring more staff. USDA is hiring more staff to be more efficient and cull more deer during the winter seasons. But as you might know, we can't just hire the staff for the 4 months that this is happening when they actually have to be year-round employees. So we're finding other work for them to do over the summer and spring months. And that costs a lot of money. So right now we have an allowance to spend up to $1 million on that. And actually today, after this, we're gonna go to the board and ask for upping that allowance to $1.5 million for the next 5 years, but that doesn't mean we'll be spending $1.5 million. It's just having that ability to do it. Right now we are adding, we're allowing $1 million for that. And that grew by about 50%. We were spending about 550 before. Next, please. We have added a whole new section to our wildlife group. We, in conjunction with Brookfield Zoo Chicago and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign School of Veterinary Medicine, we hired a wildlife vet in residence, and it's a new program. There isn't a program in the United States that is fully certified, and the one that we are doing in conjunction with those 2 other institutions is the first fully certified program in the United States. So that is training for the future wildlife biologists who are veterinarians. So veterinarians who will specialize in seeing the health of wildlife. And that's already paid a lot of dividends, not only like the awards that we received, but they have found new trends and new diseases that are found in wildlife, and that allows us to make decisions how we're managing for these things. And it also feeds into, as you know, zoonotic diseases that can affect humans and the research on that. So we're hiring another vet in residence, but then also all the research, sometimes you don't know, you need to do some tests until you have a good suspicion that something is off. So the vets in residence that we're going to have, as well as supporting the lab work that they're doing, is about $250,000 a year that we've added due to the referendum. Next. We also increased our fish stocking. So we have over 40 recreational lakes in the forest preserves, and we used to spend between $30,000 to $50,000 in stocking fish into them. We're up to $75,000 a year, so we upped it by 50%. And we also added aquatic vegetation management contractor. And that is helpful because with high level of recreational lakes, we can't get to all of the lakes all the time, or if we're like spraying at Bossy or Skokie Lagoons, we can't address other issues. So having that contractor allows us to be more flexible and nimble in addressing the needs. Next. We also are spending about $200,000 a year starting a seed amplification program. So starting our own nursery and ways to amplify seeds. Up till now, most of the seed in the forest preserves was collected by volunteers or contractors. But as of this year, we have hired a nursery manager and technician. Actually, Chicago Botanic Garden hired them for us and are training them with us for forest preserves through our agreement that we have, but we're paying for these positions. And that will help with collecting rare species, growing them out, collecting the seeds, or planting those grow outs back into nature. So CBG is also growing a lot of those species for us. There's seed banking, the rare seeds that we are anticipating for populations that are in decline, that we want to make sure that we have those going forward. And then we're spending, as we're building out the actual nursery, we're spending a lot of money on the materials. Some of our land is in floodplains, so we're doing raised beds for those build outs. As you know, like cedar or soil, all of it costs, so that adds up. And then we are also spending a whole bunch of money on equipment. We have been lucky that we were successful in receiving a lot of ARPA, so that's American Rescue Act Plan funding. And that has sort of took pressure off spending our own in-house money on the restoration, because we're using the funding from ARPA, and has freed us up to purchase a lot of equipment. So we're buying a lot of equipment for our crews, so they could do brush mowing or have equipment for fire, etc. But we're also bought motors for fisheries crews and some other stuff like high resolution microscope cameras for our entomologist that works with us. Next, please. We also bought trucks, or we're in the process of purchasing trucks. Even if you have money, it's really hard right now to access those. Skid steers, Argos, chippers, trailers, and other things that were cherry pickers, those bucket trucks that we're trying to still purchase. We're spending a lot of money for that, but we're hoping that this is an investment that will be paying off in years to come. And it was necessary, because we added a sixth crew that needed all this equipment, but also because a lot of our other staff was just aging and stopped being reliable. We're also trying to, as much as possible, move our power tools to electric and battery powered hand tools. So we're spending money and updating that equipment as well. I then include, I don't know why that happened.
Oh, sorry.
But I didn't include Conservation Corps is also getting $1 million more. So that is a project where we are hiring either youth or people with just barriers to employment, and trying to give them a job and provide skills in this green industry, so then they could apply and be our resource aides, etc. So I'd love to take any questions that people have and try to do my best to answer them, but the referendum really changed how we're doing things and how big we can dream. So I would encourage everyone to do it. And John says that we are living in the golden era of the forest preserves, and I could not agree more.
That's wonderful. Casey Sullivan had a question in the chat. He said, hello, Isabella and everyone. Wildlife crossing such projects would exceed the 42 million, but does the district have a division for wildlife crossings? These might be funded through state and federal partnerships.
It's a timely question. So we don't have specific wildlife crossing projects, but we are thinking of a few. We know we have few roads leading to our preserves that are just traps, especially for amphibians and reptiles during breeding season. So we're trying to do something about that. And we also have noticed that sometimes our parking lots are trapping some of small frogs and other creatures on there. So we are starting a new sort of group of people who can think about that and see where we can make changes on existing infrastructure, but also how to improve infrastructure coming forward. So we're not asking the question of how do we not harm wildlife, which is an important question, but we're also asking the question, what can we do to help wildlife as we're, repaving parking lots or building a building? So I think once we have a better plan, we would love to figure out more about this opportunity. But if you think there are people we should talk to and connect and sort of join powers and leverage work and funding, I would love to explore that further. I'll put my email in the chat.
Ted, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Isa, I'm wondering if there might not be opportunities for that wildlife crossing conversation in the rights of way group because of the transportation partners that are active in that group. That's something that I can raise with them if that's an interest to this group, but that's what popped into my head.
That is a good connection. We do have a representative on the rights of way, the row group, and I'll mention that to her to be on the lookout too. But yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
We're always interested in how we can improve what we're doing and what others are doing. Learn from our colleagues. Peer learning is really important. And if there's funding opportunities, we are more than willing to explore them too.
Actually, to follow up on that, Ted, I think that we did discuss with Mark hosting a cafe and with the Rights of Way Working Group to maybe showcase some of the data around that, and maybe that would be a great opportunity to invite all of this group to participate in that cafe.
Agreed. Thank you, Laura.
Does anyone else have any questions? All right, well, I've heard that other counties are maybe ramping up to do this, or something like it. So,
yeah, I know our legislative affairs group is also willing to share how they've accomplished that, but really a lot of it was partners. A majority of it was our partners, and that whole community of support that has pulled through and urged their supporters to support us. And we got voted, I think 67% yes, county-wide. So that was, it wasn't just like, yeah, okay. It was like a resounding yes. So that really made us happy for the obvious reasons.
all right, well, Isa, thank you so much for giving us that update. This group, I think that's really valuable to the people of this group who work for these similar agencies or the one that you're in.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, Becky should be able to answer more specific restoration questions since I have to turn off. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you, Zoe. All right, so next, Amy Dahl is gonna give us a short update about herbicide licensing.
So, I'm a friend of the one of the entrepreneurs, and I've been in this position for, just over 3 years. And one of the first things I heard about when I started this position was how the herbicide licensing exam was not helpful or useful for people who are doing natural areas work. It's been on my radar to think about and to work on since that time. So I was at a meeting unrelated to this issue at the Illinois Department of Agriculture back in the spring. And at the end of that meeting, there were probably 10 people from the Illinois Department of Ag who were sitting at the table. And I said, okay, I have another issue to address, and it's we would like to have a conservation-based license. There are several organizations that have been asking for it. And somebody at the table said, yes, we can do that. It requires an amendment to the Illinois Department of Ag's agreement with the US EPA related to FIDRA. And I won't get into that, but we had been hearing rumors, or we had been told that we had to wait for them to get to the point where they were renewing their agreement. And that timing was always a little bit fuzzy to us. And somebody at the table said, no, we can just amend our agreement at any time. And so that's when we convened a meeting because I knew there were lots of partners that were interested in working on this. So we made it really clear to them that we're not looking for a test that is easier. That seemed to be a big hang up from the director who was in the meeting. And I just looked at him and I said, we're not asking for a test that's easier. You can make it harder. We just want it to be relevant to the work that we're doing. And people in the room seem to agree with that. It's kind of messy and complicated because of the way they do their training and outsource things to the GVI extension. But Matt, you back up.
Oh, yeah.
For a second. So, we also know it's possible because Florida, and we know at least Florida and Wisconsin have such an exam and such a basically a license. So we've had 2 meetings so far, just on Zoom with, Friends of the Forest Preserves of Cook County, Illinois Environmental Council, TNC, Illinois Audubon, Open Lands, and ILM, Integrated Lakes Management. So basically just gathering people who are interested in working on this. We've also been talking to IDNR and figuring out who at IDNR is our contact people in, and University of Illinois Extension. We know they're going to be a key partner in this because they handle basically the Department of Ag outsources everything to them. So now you can go to the next slide. So we're starting to gather information. I will tell you, I am not the subject matter expert in this at all. So in full disclosure, I am not a licensed herbicide applicator. I'm just the convener and the note taker. So some of the topics that we are considering, overall, what we want to do is make this work better so that all of you that are working in natural areas management and our supervising staff, what we're hearing frequently is that staff, the people who are doing this work have to study for this test, and they spend hours studying so that they can pass the test, and then they have to be retrained by their supervisors to actually do the work with you. So we want the information that they're studying for to be relevant. We're also hearing that many times they can't pass the test because it's irrelevant information, but we know that they are capable of doing the job. The other thing that's happening is that the tests and the testing materials until recently were only available in one language. And even now, I think the update to having a version in Spanish may not have solved that problem completely. So we've had some notes from people who actually are certified and have taken the test and are much more familiar with this, that talked about some things we want to consider: remove or reduce the information about emulsifiers, powders, pre-emergence lawn care, update or make relevant changes about soil treatments and the impact on current root system, total vegetation control, and herbicide drift. So we want to make sure that the test is relevant to natural areas. We want additions that
sorry, that I know that technicize is not the word I meant to use there, but basically we wanna figure out how, make sure that people know how to minimize drift and off-target damage. The difference in applications to remnant are high quality areas versus a recreated natural area. And some sort of invasive plant ID or plant anatomy so that people are helping people understand what they're applying. We want test and study materials in many languages. And so we're still in the gathering information of what are the goals of what we want to see change. Our next steps, we're pulling in the U of I extension. We finally found the relevant person to talk to at U of I extension. Joe at Illinois Audubon just kept bugging them until we got the right person. And so we think we have the right person involved in the conversation. And they said, what about the master gardeners? And I'm like, great, bring them along. So, and also, so we want to include them and IDNR in our conversations. We're developing the list of the goals and proposed changes. The staff at Forest Preserves of Cook County said that they would arrange a meeting with the Illinois Department of Agriculture. We want them to know we're continuing to work on this. We don't want to spend too much time going down one road and then find that we get a roadblock with the Department of Ag again. So we want to keep them involved. And if people are interested in sending suggestions, I'm happy to, I opened up a Word document to take notes from this group about things they'd like to see, potential goals. But also I put my email address there. So again, I'm just the compiler, the note taker, and the convener, not the subject matter expert. But I'm happy to go sit in the Illinois Department of Ag office and tell them that we want a better test.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy, for the update there and for spearheading it. Does anybody have any questions or comments online or in the room?
I've got a question that you probably won't be able to answer, but what's the timeline for this? When do you think that the new exam might be ready? I'm guessing not this year, but next
No.
year, 5 years?
It could take a while because we're hoping that they will be open to looking at the materials on the test. We know that other states are doing this. I know nothing about whether or not the Wisconsin tests or the Florida tests are any good, but there are probably people in our networks that know. And so hopefully that it is the U of I extension office that will be preparing the tests and the study materials. So it depends really on how much we can get the Department of Ag to move this along, but I think if we partner with U of I extension on saying we want to do this, that it could be, it won't be in a year. I mean, but it hopefully will at least have progress and we'll know what the timeline will look like in the next 6 months. But it's a state of Illinois government program, so it won't happen fast that I can tell you.
Shocker.
Becky?
Yeah, do you know, and this may be too early to say, but like what situations this license would allow you to apply herbicide under? Because I know there's already an alternative herbicide license where you can apply like a 1-year certification, I think it's called practical herbicide, and you can apply, you know, to cut stump treatment and things. Would this be for, like, what would it cover you to apply?
So the 1-year alternative license that you're talking about, and this is where we've also spent some time kind of advocating. So the 1-year alternative license allows volunteers working on public land to apply herbicide that it has basically, it's pretty restrictive of what they can do, and they can't mix and they can't apply unless there is somebody licensed who has done the mixing and is on site. So that one is, and it's a 1-year license, and you have to do a training every year with representative, an employee of the land and the agency. So we're not making any changes we're not proposing any changes to that. What we're proposing is that there be a test that is basically not agricultural based, that would give people the same rights as all the other licenses. So I'm thinking like that 1-year that is a certificate program, basically, we're looking at making changes to the license, the 3-year license that.
You're talking applicator versus operator.
I'm more thinking like,
There's-
it's only
yeah.
applicable to the public lands, is it for contractors?
It would be, and yeah,
That's a good question. So it's almost like the applicator not for hire. Would there be like a conservation applicator not for hire and a
Yeah.
conservation applicator for hire?
that's,
So that would probably need to be, yeah, that it would make the most sense to build it the same way so that there's one for each, right?
yeah, that makes sense.
'Cause now I believe if you get the license, you could use this working for a contractor. Um, Yeah, so that would be important for our contractors to.
Yeah.
I guess use it in a
Yes.
for hire situation.
And I think, like, I've talked to, staff from ILM have sat in on some of the conversations.
Oh, great.
And actually have provided some really good, a lot of what we have has come from their notes about thinking about, very similarly, like they hire staff, send them off to study and take the test, then they come back to work and say, great, now I need to train you so that you can actually go work for our clients.
Right.
And that's not helpful. And so we've had some conversations also with contractors, because I think this is as relevant to them as it is to all of us.
We see a lot of, I see a lot of homeowners getting their contractors that may not be like the caliber of ILM. And they go into these high quality areas and cause havoc. So we've been really looking forward to having some sort of training program where, you know, contractors could get hired to work in some of these like remnant populations that are privately held and not on public land. So this is very good. The faster this can happen, the better.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I think, yeah, having the CW network plugged in is really important to this. So anybody who wants to get involved, just reach out to Amy or Laura and we can all connect together. Yeah, this has been a need for a long time, right? So.
And there may be a need at some point, like what I learned in my meeting with the Illinois Department of Ag on an unrelated issue, but they had 10 people sitting across the table from me, a team member from IEC and a team member from Prairie Riverstone. So like they bring people in for, so there may be a call one day, I'm like, we need people to drive to Springfield and sit at the table across from the Department of Ag, or to write letters, or to like apply some pressure to move this along. So we're not at that point yet, but that may be one of the things that helps this move a little bit faster.
Definitely. And then I guess I just want to ask one question to the group is, I know people have been involved with the CW network for, you know, a decade or two, in some cases. And has this ever been talked about and dreamt about before? And were there any lessons learned from a prior initiative like this? You know, if anyone can think of anything now or later, it would be helpful for the effort to know.
I know IEC was instrumental in getting that practical herbicide license, so it sounds like they're. I would also recommend talking with Karen Tharp. She's been involved in this. Effort for. You know, Karen.
Yeah, or TNC.
Yeah. They have insight on past efforts.
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Amy. That's a exciting update and glad that there's an effort for that. And if anyone wants to get plugged in, just reach out to Amy or Laura. Okay, so we'll go to the next thing, which is I just wanted to give a quick update about there's a lot of volunteer stewardship around the CW region, of course. So this is not at all going to be comprehensive, but I asked a couple of the volunteer coordinators from different organizations to provide a few updates. And so as volunteer stewardship is such a valuable team effort with the work that staff and agencies and organizations do, just want to make sure that the volunteer effort is represented at our meetings. And so the COVID kind of threw a wrench in everything, and this group hasn't met since just after COVID. And then, of course, everybody has this rebound of all the things we're doing after that year we didn't do anything. And so this group hasn't met officially or in a capacity to really meet since 2021. And so I'm going to be trying to help this group get back together this year, maybe in the fall once things slow down for all the field staff. I think one of the most recent things that has happened is that the brush pile burn boss certification has been modified to cover the CW counties. And I think Jackie Barrow at McHenry County is the one who's mostly instructing those, right? Or are there some others? And Kelly Schultz, yeah. Great. The Train the Trainer is coming up for prescribed fire, as Jay mentioned to us. And then there was in 2021 an invasive species focused training and development. I know that certain agencies and organizations have their own, and I think piling those together and creating a CW group or a CW tool or certification for invasive species management is probably a good idea for volunteers. But we'll talk more about that as that group meets, as the volunteer stewardship working group of the CW Managing Healthy Landscapes team works. Kelly provided a couple updates from Lake County, seed collecting, teasel, brush cutting, plant ID walks, wildlife, and staff and volunteers. I should have wrote volunteers too, both hosting these kinds of events. Volunteers in Lake County have been the ones who have found a lot of rusty patch bumblebees at their sites, including the staff and INHS staff. But having training for the bumblebee identification was really valuable in Lake County, as they are celebrating having more people IDing rusty patch bumblebees at new sites. We also found some of the Chicago Botanic Garden this year, so it might be a case of if you look, there are some, but we just haven't been looking quite hard enough yet. So having more eyes out there in the volunteer realm is great, and Lake County has certainly benefited from that. They also found another bumblebee species, Bombus borealis, which was not recorded in the county for 69 years. And they're getting ready for all the fall training, which is when woody brush removal and RX fire training is starting. The Kelly Schultz and Dale Shields, who published the seed collecting guide a couple of years ago. If you haven't seen that, there are links to it on the Nature Conservancy website, and I think I'll provide something in notes so that everybody can access that if you haven't seen it yet. It's a great guide, but now the next iteration is that there's a 1 or 2 hour training, self-guided. This is a screenshot of it here. So there are just a couple of sections. It's kind of like modules like S130, S190, but for seed collecting. And it's based on the seed collecting book. And so this is a great tool we've been having our interns at the Botanic Garden use this tool, and then having volunteers across the CW region know about this tool is great. This can just help people get more up to speed on phenology, dispersal types, processing and sowing seeds, which is of course important to restoration and getting more rusty patch bumblebees, etc. McHenry County, Jackie provided just a couple updates that they've had some good practical herbicide workshops. So maybe the most relevant thing to this group is that if you're planning something like this, there are people who've done it and you could reach out to them. I know that a lot of sharing, the volunteer coordinators in these agencies and organizations are really open to sharing materials, keeping them free, and planning events mostly in fall and spring and winter, I guess, to organize volunteers to get certified or trained up in some of these different skill sets that are involved with ecological restoration. Stewardship management plans, that's exciting. Would love to see where that goes. Friends of Hackmatack. So just a couple of have received the Molly Creeville Award for Friends Group of the Year, which I didn't know existed until this year. And so that's really cool. That's nice. Oh, and then, yeah, if there's anybody else who wants to give an update about anything related to volunteer stewardship in the CW region, I think today we've touched upon it in a couple different ways, but if there's anyone who wants to give an update or celebrate stellar volunteer or something like that, we have the time, so I'll say open it up to the chat in the room for a few minutes and then we can move on. Of course, the conservation herbicide license will be valuable for volunteer stewardship as well. Okay, well, without more, we can move on to Scott's slides. So thank you, Scott, for giving us an update, and I can advance for you.
Yeah, that's really, thanks, Matt. So my name is Scott Meister. I'm the Natural Resources Manager for the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County. And when Matt first approached us about hosting a meeting and a tour afterwards, I gave Matt a couple options for tours. And Matt kind of informed me that a lot of the traditional attendees to this group practice upland restoration and maybe not have been exposed so much to the aquatics and wetland restoration. And so we chose a tour site after today's meeting that emphasizes some of the aquatics work that we've been doing here in DuPage County. And then subsequently, Matt asked me if I'd be willing to give a brief presentation about some of the stream and river restoration that we've undertaken here in DuPage County over the past 2 decades. So that brings me to today's presentation, which is really just kind of a history of some of the work we've been doing and how we've gotten there. So next slide. I always like to start with this slide. We adopted a new saying here at the Forest Preserve District that thank goodness for a Superfund project. And this is the west branch of the DuPage River, just a quarter mile west of where we're sitting today in the early 2000s. There was about 8 miles of the west branch that was contaminated with radioactive thorium back in the 1930s and 1940s. And while it really wasn't accessible to the fish and mussels in the river or people that recreated on the river, it was still decided to clean up that buried contaminated thorium deep in the sediment. And so in order to clean that material up, we essentially had to stop flow in the river, and we sent the river through above ground pipes. You can see just one of many pipes in the bottom of the photo there, which allowed the river to dry out and crews to essentially excavate all of that contaminated sediment. And really what this project did was it allowed us to examine the river and see really the lack of diversity when it comes to habitat in the river. You know, we now know healthy rivers have riffles, shallow areas of water that where water will babble over and incorporate oxygen into the water. Healthy rivers have deeper pools where fish can find refuge during storm events. And when we drew down the west branch, we didn't see any of that. We saw a homogeneous landscape. We recognized all the invasive species in the riparian zones along the river. And it kind of brought to the attention how we've concentrated on upland restoration for decades, and we kind of frankly ignored some of our aquatic resources. So this Superfund project, after the river was eviscerated, we were really able to restore aquatic habitat when it was time before we allowed flow back in the river. So next slide. So this is an example of how we reconstructed the river after the sediment was excavated. We brought in a lot of stone material to create that diversity of substrate. We dug pools, we constructed riffles. Next slide. We, of course, revegetated the area, the entire riparian zone with native plants. So this is just that same location in the previous slide, just 1 year later. So it kind of shows the difference of, you know, what type of habitat we can provide in these river and stream restorations. Next slide. So the Superfund project also allowed us to remove 2 dams on the west branch of the DuPage River. So this is Warrenville Grove Forest Preserve in Warrenville, Illinois. Next slide, showing what the result was after dam removal here. Next slide. Similarly, in 2007-ish, we were able to remove a dam at McDowell Grove, which is in Naperville, also along the west branch of the DuPage River. So throughout that project, the Superfund project, which took nearly a decade to complete, we were able to restore 8 miles of the west branch of the DuPage River. Similarly, so once the project was over, again, we kind of had this new epiphany that we really shouldn't be neglecting our rivers and streams. We realized we didn't have a lot of knowledge or data about what species existed in our local aquatic environment. And it kind of tied to the Superfund project, next slide, we were able to receive a grant to construct the Urban Stream Research Center. So the USRC will be the focus of this afternoon's tour. So I don't want to steal too much of the tour's thunder, but the facility houses 4 full-time staff that is dedicated not only to conducting field surveys in our rivers and streams, but our fisheries program is out of there. And also we run a number of propagation programs, really concentrating on the health of our aquatic environments here in DuPage County. Next slide. So some of the species that are propagated out of the facility include freshwater mussels, Heinz emerald dragonfly, which is a federally endangered species, the Great Plains mudbug, a number of non-native game fish, as well as the state endangered Blanding's turtle. So again, not steal too much of their thunder, but since 2016, we have propagated and released over 29,000 freshwater mussels, not only here in DuPage County, but in some of the surrounding counties too, with some of the partners that we have. So while the Superfund project was going on, and while after, here in DuPage County, we were able to remove 5 more dams in the coming years. So in 2007, we removed a dam on Springbrook #2 at Springbrook Prairie Forest Preserve in Naperville. Next slide. In around 2010, we were able to remove a dam on the east branch of the DuPage River at Churchill Woods Forest Preserve near Glen Ellen. Next slide. About 2017, we removed a dam on Salt Creek at the preserve at Oak Meadows Golf Course near Addison. Next slide. In 2020, we removed a dam on Springbrook #1 here at Blackwell Forest Preserve. I do want to note that on our 8-minute trek to the Urban Stream Research Center, we're actually going to drive through this project. This project also won a CW Force in Nature Award in 2021. And then finally, just this past December 2023, we were able to remove a dam at the Grow Mill at Fullersburg Woods, which is on Salt Creek in Oak Brook. Next slide. So there's an after photo of the dam removal project. So since the Superfund project in the early 2000s, we've removed 7 dams here in DuPage County. And what's interesting, and what we kind of already knew, next slide, is just how the biologics, the fish, the mussels, the birds, how they just respond. This is data from Springbrook #1 at Blackwell Forest Preserve. Prior to the dam removal, we conducted fish surveys, and we had documented 17 species of fish downstream of the dam, while we only documented 7 species upstream of the dam. Next slide. Within the first year after dam removal on Springbrook #1, we documented another 7 different species that had gone upstream of where the dam had been. And we also found Johnny Darter, both upstream and downstream, which was most interesting because I think that truly highlights how all of our waterways are all connected. We've seen an increase in Johnny Darters on the west branch of the DuPage River. Springbrook #1 is connected as a tributary to the west branch. And I think maybe one of my overall messages for this presentation is just the landscape scale effect of all these little projects that slowly as you do them, as they connect to each other, the work we did on the west branch allows the fish species there to thrive and then move up into the tributaries as we begin to restore those tributaries. We all know rivers and streams, they don't know their political boundaries. So work that we're doing here hopefully carries into neighboring counties and vice versa. In addition to these dam removal projects, there have been other stream restoration projects that the Forest Preserve District has invoked on, including the West Branch of the DuPage River at West Branch Forest Preserve near Carroll Stream in 2012. Next slide. As well as upstream on Springbrook #1 at St. James Farm in 2015. You can see how we remandered the stream. You can see the remnants of the channelized stream also on the right-hand side of the photo a little bit. We kept some of those areas for other ponds and pools and aquatic habitats. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Matt. So, you know, the efforts that we've done here in DuPage County, it's great, but you know, it's not unique too. I think the statistic is since 2003, there have been 35 or 36 dams removed in the Chicago wilderness area, which is awesome, which is great. I think we're moving forward. It was good to see in Giza's presentation that the Forest Preserves of Cook County is hiring a restoration hydrologist. I think that speaks to the movement of you know, paying more attention to our aquatic resources, knowing how valuable that they are. I think that's all I got. I'd be happy to answer any questions about any of the projects.
I have a question, Scott. How many, do you know offhand, how many dams are still in place?
I don't know offhand. You know, I think there's obviously here in DuPage County, there's the Faywell Dam in Naperville. That was constructed for flood control. That dam will never be removed. However, there is an active effort right now to design and construct a fish ladder to allow for the upstream movement of fish. Down further into Will County, I know there's a couple more dams, Channahon, for example. So no, I don't know the total number. But obviously there's the big effort on Fox River. Now the Corps has suggested removing all those dams. So that's certainly a point of conversation.
Scott, how have all these been funded?
A variety of ways. A lot of them have been mitigation projects. So the West Branch Forest Preserve project was funded through the O'Hare Modernization Project. The Springbrook #1 at St. James here was funded by the Illinois Tollway as mitigation for their Elgin O'Hare Western Access Project. Springbrook #1, phase 2 at Blackwell was funded by the Tollway for the Central Tri-State project that's currently being constructed. We've received funding from the DuPage River Salt Creek Work Group for the Growl Mill Dam at Fullersburg. And there's one other one that I'm trying to, I thought I had one more example, but it's from in 319, Springbrook Prairie. That project was funded with a 319 grant from the IEPA. And we currently have an application in right now for 319 funding for more stream restoration on Springbrook #1.
I did not follow this, but it's incredible. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, there's still, I mean, I think, you know, here in the room, we're preaching to the choir. We know the ecological benefits of dam removal, but there's still public opposition. We saw some of that at Fullersburg. Thankfully, we were able to prevail and get that dam out.
Two questions. Was DuPage County Forest Preserve the lead on these projects, or was it
The Forest Preserve District has mostly been on the lead of most of these projects. We've obviously have had partners. Fullersburg Woods, that was led by the DuPage River Salt Creek Work Group, really in partnership with MWRD. They're the agency that bid the project. I'm trying to think of any other examples. We've partnered with DuPage County Stormwater Management. They had a big involvement with the Churchill Woods project, but mostly Forest Preserve District.
And then second question, did any of the projects involve, I know you mentioned the secret website, but I know the other projects involve sediment contamination upstream of the dam?
No.
We have a situation in Cook County where we'd like to remove the dam. it feels like unclear what the next step is.
Yeah, we sorry, don't have any experience.
Lucky you.
I have a question, speaking of like silting damage. When you were first talking about the Superfund site, you said it kind of lost the ripples and those deep pools, was that, you think, from silting? Just erosion damage or?
Yeah, you know, when in any of our stream projects now, we are constructing the stream for today's conditions. Many of our lakes and streams, I think, you know, they weren't accepting the amount of stormwater that they do today. And I think many of them are kind of undersized. We know this, we see all the flooding that happens during storm events. And so I think there's been a lot of erosion because of the increased velocities in the flows. So yeah, so I think a lot of it has been just sediment.
I just wanted to ask a little bit about how much public outreach you have to do and how what's the response you get working on the public side. I work for a municipality, we have to do a lot of public outreach to do stream restoration.
Yeah, I think the Fullersburg project was the most outreach that we've had to do. There are a number of campaigns. The Conservation Foundation was involved. For some of our other projects, it's been, you know, obviously we send notifications prior to we in the early days we had public meetings. They honestly weren't too well attended, so we kind of stopped with those types of public meetings. But we always use all of our media outlets, whether it be our website, social media, for example, to kind of give the heads up that this is happening. We've done a lot of videos after restoration showing the good things that do happen. You know, I gave the example of fish, but in all these projects, spotted sandpipers come back right away. The dragonfly diversity right away is pretty incredible. I think people have seen here, at least here in DuPage County, from that Superfund project, which was kind of forced upon us. There was no, you know, debate whether or not it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen, and I think people saw the benefits of the restoration after it happened and realized, hey, yeah, this is a good thing. And so we haven't had a lot of outcry or people speaking against some of the stream restoration, thankfully.
Another quick question. Have you been doing any muscle monitoring where you breathe with sun? And you see that? That's cool.
Yeah. So some of the you know, part of the staff's responsibility, or the Urban Stream Research Center, is to go and do muscle surveys. We'd never done muscle surveys prior to the Superfund site. So now we're still going to new breaches here in DuPage County, surveying to see what's there. Just last year at Green Valley Forest Preserve, which is on the East Branch, runs through there, we found maple leaf, a species of mussel that we had not recorded before in DuPage County. So, and again, I think there's a lot of restoration going on along the Plains River too, and fish species. You know, fish play an integral role in mussel propagation, and fish, if they're able to move upstream, then we're seeing the return of mussel species to certain areas too.
I have a quick question. Were there floodplain considerations when you changed the hydrology like that from a channelized to a meandered stream? Is that something that was, and of course there is just on the environment, but from the public perception side, was the re-meandering of streams and the change of water flow and flooding events a little bit, was it positive, neutral, negative?
I think it was probably neutral. There wasn't much we heard from the public. I mean, in the beginning, when we begin to tell our story of stream restoration while we're doing it, one of our goals that we talk about is floodplain reconnection. I mean, that's why the forest preserves exist too, why there's no development in our floodplains. And it's healthy for a river or stream to outflow its banks and spill into the floodplain during these storm events. And it does, while we didn't advocate that any of these projects were flood control projects, we do know that there's a higher retention time when water can spill out of its banks into the floodplain and sit there for a while and then slowly enter back into the creek. And so that was part of our message when we rolled out these projects to the public.
Cool. Thank you for answering that. And interesting that the projects didn't have that as a lead sort of reason to maybe, I always think about that as a reason for the public to agree with the project, but it was really biodiversity and waterway health related.
Yeah.
Which is a huge accomplishment. All right, any other questions on this? We had one addition to our agenda that I think Ted wants to give us. Just take 5 minutes. So Ted, take it away.
Thank you, Matt. So through the climate committee, we are working with this group of communities in Western Cook County called the C4 communities. They are doing climate planning for villages and towns that are less than 10,000 people, and have volunteer boards, right? They're elected, but they're volunteer. So one of the subsets of this is a landscape equipment electrification campaign. For the past year and a half, they've been focusing on contractors as the main pillar and point of access. About 6 months ago, that group, and with our help and guidance through the climate committee, has realized that there's been little traction with that. And because they have 14 mayors, essentially, as a political coalition, yesterday we finally had a meeting with those mayors, and they approved a pivot to a policy angle for this campaign. And it's something that I thought you guys might be interested in, because although the details have yet to be sketched out, in addition to local ordinances, what we're thinking of is taking this to the county level or even the state level, in terms of the benefits. And what we're realizing is not only is there employee benefits from, less stress on joints, tendons, ears, but there's also the pollution control aspect. And I'm sure many of you in this room know that running those pieces of equipment for an hour is akin to driving 3,000 miles in terms of emissions. But the emissions are much worse because they have VOCs, NO2, sulfur dioxide, all that stuff. And that directly contributes to asthma and all sorts of heart related and circulation and breathing related problems. So the other part of this that we learned on Friday was that there's a public health angle to this, obviously, but the big news here is, and maybe some of you knew this, just like watershed plans and watershed planning for 319 grants, any hospital that relies on and receives public funding or government federal funding has to have their own community health plan. So that may be a way into this. And I just thought that this quick update might be helpful to this group, given, Isa touched on it a little bit. And a lot of these tools are used in a lot of the work to get some of this stuff done. So please stay tuned. I'm happy to take questions now or offline. I'll put my email in the chat. But just know that this is sort of an active effort that the climate group is working on, and it touches this group. And that's why I wanted to bring this into the meeting today. And I'm sorry it's late. I didn't get it on the agenda. Literally, this meeting happened yesterday at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and was approved. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Kathy has a question. So the idea would be like local municipalities pass an ordinance requiring.
Requiring a transition away from gas-powered machines towards electric machines. Primarily, mowers are the big ticket items, and they're cost inefficient right now. But blowers and handheld tools are the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. We are going to work on mowers, but it's going to be through local ordinances. And we think, like I said, this is where we now have to pivot and think of new strategies, because the contractor angle didn't work very well. But we're looking at county, for Cook County first. But the other big news about this, and this happened last Friday, is I had a conversation with CMAP and Jared Patton there, and he is very interested in this effort as part of the EPA pollution reduction control grant. I think it's PGRE or CPRG reduction grant. So that might lend some help and impetus to this effort in a regional sort of way. Did I answer that question properly?
I think so. So like the local ordinance or county ordinance would basically require contractors working.
So one of the things that this group is working on, because these communities outside of Oak Park and like Riverside are they're in socio-demographic communities that are in the Justice 40 communities. They're working on a just transition. So we're working on not letting the contractors hang and go out of business. And that's the thorny part of this. So again, we don't know where this is going to go. We know that Evanston has ordinances. We know that Oak Park has ordinances, and there are a couple others that are working on them. But the weird thing about this group is half of them have home rule and half of them do not. And that's why we're thinking of the county or state level, because I can't remember which is which, but one of the two groups can't do much with their local ordinances without state approval. So that's all part of this. It's thorny. We're working it out, but the end goal is to drive, quote unquote, a just transition for contractors, so they don't have to be forced to do anything, but we can require, or hopefully provide, incentives and opportunities to make this a just transition for the employees and contractors that have to use this equipment but can't afford it because it's really expensive. Did that better answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Becky, I suggested maybe one Michelle, maybe turn the conversation just to see if there was any insight. Do you think that's helpful? Well, I'm saying, is there anyone else from a policy perspective, just?
Yeah, she might know if there's like funding. I think a lot of the equipment we just purchased, but.
That's right.
The competition is out there. And I think our staff are testing some of the battery life of some of this equipment to see how practical it might be.
And that's part of this effort is, it takes a trailer with solar equipment and multiple battery packs so you can switch in and out, right? Again, sort of in theory, bankrupting current contractors potentially that want to undergo this. And that in our listening sessions with the contractors, the few that we've had come to the table, has been a really important emphasis of this. So, power is coming slowly through the technological advances, but you still need charging and other power considerations. And there have been a couple contractors that do have really nice, really expensive trailers with solar, mounted tops and multiple battery packs, but that all winds into this and it has been problematic from a contractor angle.
Thanks for the update, Ted. That sounds really interesting. And I mean, in the future, we'll definitely be using less gas-powered motors 100 years from now. So it's interesting that this is all starting now. And yeah, that sounds a little thorny. We'll have to work out. But thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for letting me share that.
All right. Well, with Ted's update and Scott's presentation, that's it for the meeting today. If anybody has anything else they want to bring up for future meetings or something from today, floor is open for 4 minutes.
I just have a quick question for others in the room. We are in some county trying to put together a group, like internal working group to put together a policy around pollinator conservation for our organization. I just wondering if any other municipalities or
So Village Glenview has monarch conservation plan. We adopted, it's only been adopted at our environment and natural resources commission level. We worked with the Field Museum about 4 to 5 years ago to put that together, and then we have used it as an example for other communities, like the Field Museum put together with a roadshow about that, and that we can share. It's not gonna be find something that I mean, model in South Africa, but it's a example. Okay.
Becky, we've been here in DuPage, there's the DuPage Monarch Project, which is kind of a nonprofit, but the Forest Preserve District is a partner to that agency. A couple years ago, we did kind of a position statement or a white paper about monarch rearing, which may or may not be applicable, but more importantly, now we're working on another position statement with them. In response to DuPage County, they're going to redo the ordinance relevant to beekeeping. And so we are creating a position statement about proximity to natural areas and why we don't allow honeybees in forest preserves, et cetera. So that might be valuable. I'm happy to share.
That would be incredible. And part of what has spurred this is that some of our nature centers, we have honeybee hives. That have been used in educational programming. We'd like to close those out. So that was part of the impetus, but then we decided to expand it a bit to have more our operations and how we want to follow. As we all know, when we get into that, it kind of touches everything. So trying to do something that can really store without and brought back. So that sounds really nice.
Yep, I can share.
Thank you.
Ted suggested the green infrastructure working group efforts in the rights of way work might be good to reach out to those groups as well. All right, well, it is 10:58, so if there's nothing else, thank you all for being here, and thanks to DuPage County for having us and giving us great updates about the work going on here and the fire program. Anyone else has anything they want to add to an agenda for a future meeting, please reach out. I'll reach out to people as well for future meetings to talk about agenda items and everything from hot topics to just things that are nuts and bolts that we all need to talk to each other about and like to talk to each other about. So the tour will be from now for 45 minutes. Well, once we get there, 45 minutes at the Urban Stream Research Center. The address is here on the screen. And thank you all for being here online. And always reach out to Laura, me, or Patty if you're interested in anything related to this group. All right, thanks a lot. Did you want to add anything, Laura?
No, well, I think it's really great topics that were shared here today, and some of them I would love to see put into a cafe, because I feel like there's such broad appeal for the whole region, for the whole Providence Alliance membership. So I may be reaching out to some of you, but if you would also like to consider having a larger discussion, please reach out to me and do a cafe on these topics, because I think it's actually really great work that we don't want to just silo in this group and then in this room. So let's figure out how to make those additional connections to get it happening.
Absolutely. All right, well, we might be reaching out. And if you have something that you'd like to share with the wider group in the CW Alliance, reach out to us, because that's what this is all about, networking and collaborating. So thanks a lot for being here again, and we'll talk in another quarter. In October 22nd is the next meeting.
Is the service road open, or